At over 300 kilometers per hour, the weakness becomes impossible to hide. The SF-26 slices through the final corner with precision, stable, planted, almost perfect. But the moment it straightens, something changes. The acceleration fades. The surge isn't there. And within seconds, the gap begins to open. Not in the corners, on the straights, where championships are quietly decided. Ferrari already know the problem. They've seen the numbers, they've heard it from both sides of the garage, and now, instead of fixing it piece by piece, they've made a decision that could redefine their entire season. Everything, every upgrade, every concept, every solution is arriving at once in Miami. Because this isn't just development anymore, this is a calculated risk. And the question is no longer whether Ferrari can improve, it's whether they've chosen the right moment to gamble everything. The first 3 races didn't just reveal Ferrari's performance, they exposed its contradiction. Through medium and high-speed corners, the SF-26 looked like one of the most complete cars on the grid. The aerodynamic platform was stable, predictable, and capable of carrying remarkable minimum speeds through technical sections. On paper and on track, it suggested a car that should be fighting consistently at the front. But Formula One doesn't reward balance alone. Because the moment the car exited those corners and entered the straights, the advantage disappeared, not gradually, not subtly, immediately. The loss wasn't tied to a single flaw, it was layered. A deficit in power unit output, inefficiencies in energy deployment, a system that, under real race conditions, simply wasn't delivering when it mattered most. And internally, Ferrari didn't deny it, they acknowledged it. The power unit wasn't just a concern, it was the main weakness. That admission changed the entire trajectory of their development approach. Because once a limitation becomes that clear, incremental gains are no longer enough. You're no longer refining performance, you're chasing correction. At the same time, pressure was building from within the cockpit. Both drivers were pushing for faster solutions, not future upgrades, not long-term fixes, immediate answers. And that's where the decision was made. Originally, Ferrari planned a gradual evolution, small upgrades across multiple races, each validated step by step. A controlled process designed to minimize risk and maximize understanding. But 2 canceled races disrupted everything. The timeline collapsed. What was supposed to unfold over multiple rounds was suddenly compressed into a single window. And instead of adjusting cautiously, Ferrari chose to accelerate. They didn't delay, they consolidated. An entire development cycle, reduced into one defining moment, Miami. Not just an upgrade package, something closer to a reset, but that wasn't the real story. The most revealing part of Ferrari's situation isn't the concept, it's the numbers. Because beneath the visible performance gap lies a deficit that can be measured and, more importantly, felt over every lap. Estimates suggest Ferrari are down by approximately 20 brake horsepower compared to the leading power units. In isolation, that number doesn't sound catastrophic. But in a regulatory era where margins are measured in hundredths, 20 brake horsepower isn't a gap, it's a limitation. At high speeds, that deficit compounds. Over a full straight, it translates into tenths. Across multiple straights, it becomes a pattern. And over a race distance, it defines your competitiveness. But power alone isn't the full story. The 2026 regulations have fundamentally shifted the importance of energy deployment. Electrical systems are no longer supplementary. They are central to performance. And this is where Ferrari's second issue becomes even more critical. Their energy deployment isn't just inefficient, it's inconsistent. Drivers are forced into situations where the battery deploys energy when it isn't strategically optimal. And when they need that energy, when defending or attacking, it's no longer available. This leads to a phenomenon known as super clipping, a phase where the car effectively runs out of electrical assistance and loses speed dramatically on the straights. And that's where Ferrari's real deficit emerges, not just in peak performance, but in how performance is distributed across a lap. Meanwhile, other teams are managing this balance more effectively, extracting consistent deployment, maximizing recovery phases, maintaining speed where it matters most. Even within Ferrari, there are signs that understanding is still evolving. One side of the garage appears to extract more consistency than the other, suggesting that the system itself is not yet fully optimized. Which brings us to the most critical element of the Miami upgrade: not the visible changes, but the invisible one. A complete revision of power unit software, designed specifically to control how energy is deployed and recovered across the lap. If it works, it doesn't just close the gap, it changes the entire performance profile of the car, and that leads to a deeper question. Because fixing numbers is one thing, understanding them is something else entirely. Ferrari's challenge isn't just technical, it's philosophical. Because the SF26 represents a car built around one clear strength: cornering performance. Its aerodynamic platform prioritizes stability, load generation, and mechanical confidence through complex sections of the track. It's a car that rewards commitment. But Formula One, especially under the current regulations, rewards efficiency. And that's where the contrast begins to emerge. Other teams have shifted their philosophy toward a more balanced performance envelope, sacrificing a degree of cornering dominance in exchange for straight-line efficiency and optimized energy deployment. Ferrari, by comparison, leaned heavily into aerodynamic grip. And initially it worked. The car was competitive, predictable, capable of delivering strong lap times under the right conditions. But the cost of that philosophy is now becoming visible, because every gain in downforce introduces drag, and without sufficient power or efficient energy deployment to compensate, that drag becomes a liability. That's why the Miami package isn't just an upgrade, it's a philosophical adjustment. The new floor is designed not just to increase downforce, but to improve aerodynamic efficiency, generating grip without the same drag penalty. It's an attempt to retain their core strength while addressing its consequences. But the more radical concept lies at the rear of the car. The so-called Macarena rear wing, a design that allows controlled movement under aerodynamic load, theoretically reducing drag on straights while maintaining stability in corners. In ideal conditions, it could be worth several tenths per lap, but ideal conditions rarely exist in Formula One. Early testing revealed instability, particularly under braking and transitional phases, moments where the car is neither fully straight nor fully loaded, and in racing, those moments are everywhere. Which raises an important contrast between innovation and reliability, between potential and execution. Because a concept can be brilliant in theory, but if it cannot be trusted over race distance, it becomes a risk, and Ferrari are now choosing to bring that risk to Miami, which shifts the narrative again from development to decision. Ferrari's situation is not defined by a single weakness, it's defined by accumulation, a deficit in power, inefficiency in deployment, aerodynamic trade-offs that, while beneficial in corners, become costly on the straights. Individually, each issue is manageable. Together, they become decisive. And that's why their approach to Miami matters. Because instead of addressing these problems gradually, Ferrari have chosen to confront them simultaneously. To introduce solutions across multiple areas at once: software, aerodynamics, structural design. It's a comprehensive response, but also a complex one. Because the more variables you introduce, the more difficult it becomes to isolate what works and what doesn't. And in a race environment, under pressure with limited preparation, that complexity increases. Which means Miami is not just a test of upgrades, it's a test of understanding, of whether Ferrari have truly identified the root of their problems or are still navigating their symptoms. So the real question isn't whether Ferrari will improve in Miami. They will. The question is how meaningful that improvement will be, because if this package delivers even partially, it could shift their entire season. Close the gap, change the narrative, reintroduce them into the fight. But if it doesn't, if the issues remain or new ones emerge, then this moment becomes something else entirely, not a breakthrough, but a missed opportunity. And in a championship defined by development pace, missed opportunities don't just delay progress, they define outcomes. So is Miami the race where Ferrari finally aligned performance with potential, or the moment where their biggest gamble reveals just how far they still have to go?